Hi everybody, this is Brian Gregory from Ribbon Communications. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about Microsoft Teams. So Teams, as you probably already know, is just the heavyweight in communication and collaboration. It's got just great tools for video conferencing and document sharing and document storage and retrieval and creating teams where you can share things among your coworkers. It's just a terrific product for all those sorts of business applications. Today, what this video is going to be all about is the integration of voice into your Teams infrastructure. So you're using Teams today, you may be using chat or storage or the actual Teams elements. Now you want to integrate voice. You want to bring in calling plans and PBX features and things like that. So I want to hit on all that stuff today and some things you might want to be thinking about as you move over to Teams as your one product for your enterprise communications. So first, a little background. So Teams is part of the Office 365 suite, which includes common apps like Excel, Word, PowerPoint, things like that. So out of the box, Teams offers lots of great peer-to-peer capabilities, things like instant messaging, video conferencing, collaboration, easy document sharing. That's sort of step one of your Teams journey. Typically, the next step is to add in voice into that environment. So that's where you need to add in what's called Phone System. So what's Phone System? So Phone System is Microsoft's pretty full-featured cloud-based PBX. It has all the PBX features that you commonly think of, like call, transfer, and park, and shared line appearances, and all those kind of PBX features. So from there, you're going to need to add voice services. So you have Teams, you have kind of the heart of your system, you have Phone System, which is your PBX. From there, you'll need to add voice services, and here's where you have a few options. The first are Microsoft calling plans. These are calling plans available directly from Microsoft. They're available in 10 countries around the world, mostly in Europe and North America. Microsoft has also launched something called Business Voice, which is a combination of Phone System plus calling plans. But for simplicity's sake, I'll just talk about calling plans here, which is really the core voice offering from Microsoft. Direct routing, you're using a third party to deliver your voice services. And you go to your service provider and you buy SIP trunks. You add a session border controller into that environment, an SBC, and that SBC is going to act as a demarcation between your network and the service provider's network. Okay, well, let's compare these two and see which one makes the most sense for your organization. First, let's start with cost. So Microsoft calling plans are very nicely structured as a flat rate per employee. So $12 per month for employee, $24 per month for employee if that employee requires international calling. So I think for a lot of small businesses, that's going to make perfect sense, right? It's a simple, easy, flat rate per month kind of calling plan. But once you start getting a little bit bigger, a little more complicated, different employees have different calling patterns, I think what you're going to find is direct routing starts to make more sense. Looking at typical trunking prices and prices for SBCs, roughly speaking, 25 employees starts to make pretty good sense where you want to start not looking at the Microsoft calling plans and instead thinking seriously about direct routing. So that's cost. Let's talk a little bit about availability. So as I mentioned earlier, calling plans are available in 10 countries around the world. So if you have employees outside those 10 countries, you won't be able to offer them voice services. You're probably going to look at direct routing because you'll just have better coverage options. And then lastly, let's talk about provider preference. Today you have a service provider that's providing you voice services. Presumably you're pretty happy with. You're on a contract most likely. With direct routing, you can pretty much continue that relationship into the future and then move those trunks over to Teams away from your existing environment. So that makes perfect sense from a direct routing perspective as opposed to, in essence, switching service provider by going to calling plans. When you deploy Teams direct routing, you're going to need to include an SBC as part of your design. So an SBC is going to act as that demarcation, that line in the sand between your network and your service provider's network. So when you start thinking about how you're going to deploy that, you actually have two options. One, a traditional route, and one, a more cloud-based option. So the first is to deploy a hardware-based SBC and put that in your network or data center locally near where your other telecom equipment resides. This is really a great solution if you're, say, transitioning from an existing IPPBX to Teams, or maybe you're going to keep some users on an IPPBX and other users on Teams. This gives you a lot of flexibility on how you manage your users, your dial plans, things like that, that enable you to kind of shift that over time. The second option is really, like I said, is a more of a cloud-based option using an SBC that resides in the Azure cloud, so in the Microsoft-based cloud. And you can just purchase a license for the number of sessions that you need for that SBC that resides in the Microsoft cloud. But what exactly is an SBC providing? For me, it kind of comes down to three main things. So the first thing is protection. An SBC is really acting as a voice firewall. It keeps the bad guys out of your network. It cuts off things like toll fraud and denial of service attacks. These are things that can really, really cripple your network and cost you money. The next thing is connectivity. So when you start connecting up different devices, whether that be a fax machine or a phone in an elevator or what have you, you have lots of different things in your network, and then you have lots of different service provider configurations that you need to account for. So an SBC normalizes all that stuff. So as you want to connect in devices on your side and you want to connect to a particular service provider, the SBC makes all that simple because it acts as that demarcation line between your network and the service provider. The last thing is resiliency. So an SBC can keep your voice services active in case of an outage or power loss. It's critical that you think through how you keep your networks resilient during outages, keep your voice services up and running so it doesn't cost you business. I want to talk a little bit about migration. Like most organizations, you've assembled some piecemeal amount of PBX assets from a variety of different sources. Many times you have key systems at smaller locations, maybe a PBX at a bigger location. You have something different at a call center. What frequently happens is this sort of mishmash of solutions that range across your organization. So one of the things that an SBC is definitely going to help you with is making a thoughtful transition away from some of those piecemeal solutions to Teams as a unified platform. So one of the things you can do with Teams is deploy it on a user-by-user basis and then use Active Directory to transition calls from sort of old to new and migrate those users over time. So the SBC in that case can act as the glue between the old and the new environment and help you intelligently transition from one environment to the next. So now that we've covered direct routing and SBCs, let's talk about some of the other things you might want to consider as you deploy Teams into your organization. So the first thing I want to talk about is business continuity. Now, when I say business continuity, I mean having a strategy and an implementation in place such that if there are failures, whether that failure be something small like a power outage or a cable cut or whatever, or something more catastrophic like a hurricane hitting your call center, you have a game plan in place to make sure voice and data is rerouted. I'm sure this is something that you've looked into. I mean, this is something that good IT administrators always think about and think about contingency planning. But let's cover that as it relates to Teams. So one of the easiest and most effective means of implementing business continuity is to have a redundant data connection at those sites that you deem most critical. So this can be a second wired connection, but I think most people consider a wireless connection as a more effective means of providing backup. The main reason is, if say a backhoe digs up those cables outside your building, your systems can remain operational because that wireless connection is not going to be effective. So to that end, it's important to have the smarts at each site that can look at both hard outages and network degradations and switch to the best connection when it's most optimal. There's a couple of different ways to do that. I think one way is obviously just get a wireless modem, connect that to your router, and configure that router to fail over. The solution we have at Ribbon is a little more elegant. We just launched a product called the Edgemark 6000. So out of the box, it is a fully certified Teams SBC, plus it's a router, a firewall, and it has embedded 4G functionality. So not only will it fail over on a hard outage, but it'll also look at the performance of that primary connection. So if it senses degradation on that primary connection, it'll switch over to the wireless connection, the 4G connection, and then switch back when conditions warrant. So it's really a much more elegant solution to solve for business continuity. So I think another thing that you want to consider in your Teams implementation is telecom fraud. What if somebody gets inside of your network unbeknownst to you? A common way of doing that might be to figure out or hack a password. So they're now inside your network. So generally speaking, what you're going to want to do is deploy a fraud management tool, a fraud management platform that enables you to look at all of your calls across your entire network, looking for patterns, and then using AI to figure out where there might be fraudulent activity. And once that fraudulent activity is discovered, giving you the tools to shut that down immediately. So as an example, our platform here at Ribbon called Fraud Protect can monitor your entire network for nefarious activity. It works not only with Ribbon equipment, but other major hardware providers as well. It's really an insurance policy. It gives you that peace of mind that if the bad guys come looking around, you have the tools to not only spot their activity, but to stop it as well. Well, I hope this video was helpful to you in learning a little bit more about Teams direct routing, some of the best practices that you want to implement as part of your Teams deployment. If you're looking for some additional information, head over to our website at rbbn.com and check out the Microsoft section. We have some terrific downloadable content out there that I think would definitely help you along on your Teams journey.